There you go. Okay, so while we're waiting here, I want you to share in the chat where you're watching from and what your biggest meal planning frustration is in 5 words or less. Feel free to share this in the main chat, or if it's something that feels a little bit more personal, you can also send it to just me directly. Okay, I'm also going to share a link in the chat here for the Plan A guide and workbook that you're also going to receive in an email at the end of class. But there are worksheets at the end of this download or document where um, we're going to be working through those together during the presentation today. So I'll pop that in here. Oh, oops. Uh-oh. I might have to pop out of that real fast. Let's see if I can find a link. Okay, there we go. So feel free to click that link there. You can look through um, the worksheets at the end. And let's go ahead and get started. Hey, welcome to Plan A. I'm really glad that you're here. And we're going to start out by I'm going to give you a quick rundown of what we're going to cover today. So we'll start out with a quick intro. I'll tell you who I am and what the goals of this class are. Then I'm going to tell you what I typically see happening with my clients who are struggling. Um, to reach nutrition goals, including the number one pitfall that I see women falling into. And then I'm going to talk to you about what you really need to do to reach your goals around food and how meal planning can help you get there. Then I'm going to break down what meal planning really is and show you just how simple it can and should be. Then we're going to walk through making a meal plan together in real time. So this is where, again, you can use the worksheets that are in the document that I just sent you, or I'll have you grab a pen and paper during that time. And then we're going to talk about how you can best implement this moving forward, including using a simplified version of meal prepping as a supportive tool for meal planning. Then I'm going to do a quick recap, share a special unlimited opportunity that is going to allow us to dig deeper into your specific plan and get more personalized support towards working towards your goals there. Then I'm going to open it up for questions. But as we go along, if you have any questions or thoughts pop up, feel free to type them in the chat there while they're fresh on your mind. The teaching portion is going to be about 30 minutes, and then I'm going to open it up for questions at the end of the presentation. So even if I don't respond to the chat or what you put in the chat right away, I will run through it all at the end and we'll go over it there. Okay, so before we get started, I want to introduce myself. My name is Anna Bolte, and I own Bolte Fitness. And I started out in the fitness world about 15 years ago. And after working, or after shifting into working more specifically with women, pregnant and postpartum folks going through perimenopause, menopause, post, etc. I quickly saw that there's this massive societal pressure put on these groups of people to bounce back, or that their bodies shouldn't change throughout their lives, or that they needed to look a certain way based off of made up standards that were didn't really have any evidence around them. And through my own struggles with disordered eating habits and body dysmorphia, I saw just how damaging diet culture really is and how deeply intertwined it is with white supremacy and patriarchal values. So I wanted to do better for myself, for my children, and for my clients, of course, too. And since then, I get to help folks find some moderation and practical solutions so that they can have a more positive relationship with food on their own terms. And that goes with exercise too, since that's also a big part of my business. I like to think of kind of moving away from this all or nothing approach that is often believed in the fitness and nutrition world. Okay, I know that you might not want to meal plan, and that is totally okay. Meal planning as a phrase alone can feel a bit overwhelming for a lot of people. And I just want you to know that's okay. Like, you don't have to ever even love it. But I do know that you want to make more deliberate, more filling, nutritious choices when it comes to food. So, in this class, I'm going to give you the framework that is going to allow you to create a strategic and stress-free and realistic meal plan for your life. Because I know it can be a much needed tool to help you reach any nutrition goals that you have. And it can also just help you be consistent in a long-term and more sustainable way. Um, because meal planning can help you get back in control of your relationship with food so that you're able to make choices that feel right for your body and for your life. Okay, so how things have been going. Need to move this little box. Um, So typically what happens is when someone decides that they want to start working towards or on a nutrition goal, they find some sort of plan online, something that their friend is following or their favorite influencer. They try to impose, and when I say impose, I usually am meaning force here on their life. But then life starts lifing and it gets in the way. So they stop doing the plan and then they feel like they have failed. They feel ashamed and frustrated, and then they end up trying again later, oftentimes with a new and sometimes more extreme plan. And this just becomes this vicious cycle then. Or they get so overwhelmed that they don't even know where to start or what to make, like one person said. Which brings us to the number one pitfall that I frequently see my clients falling into, which is that folks tend to focus on the details before building the necessary framework. And this is often thanks to the messaging that the diet industry and diet culture in general is pushing out all the time. The diet industry is a $1 billion industry and it thrives on keeping women focused on their bodies, on shrinking themselves, or on their aesthetics at all times because they're not making money if you are actually succeeding in reaching your goals. Okay. As well, studies have shown for a long time that diets are not sustainable. And a lot of times, what happens is that people actually end up off weight, they end up worse off and even further from their goals after trying to follow one because it's so restrictive or strict that they have to, or not have to, but they do end up falling off of it. But what diet culture has been successful at is getting us very, very confused when it comes to all things food, really, which then leads to a lot of focus about worrying about the details that people don't really have the ability to implement anyways. So, what this can look like in nutrition and around food is that people are worrying about the types of food that they should or shouldn't be eating, the amounts of foods, the timing of when they're eating food, when they don't even consistently have any sort of routine around eating habits in general. So, for example, You can't eat more vegetables if you don't actually have vegetables on hand or if you're never prepping or having them available to you. As well, a common reason why people are struggling is because they aren't actually eating enough. And diet culture may have also made them a bit afraid of eating certain foods. There are so many things out there that are saying this is junk food or labeling foods as junk food, toxic, things like that. That actually is, it's just like made up terms that they're putting on foods that just doesn't really have any actual evidence. So if you want to be more in control of your nutrition and be able to actually make some choices, you need to be eating regularly because you're not going to make any sort of good choices out of a place of deprivation or hunger. Okay, so I want you to take a moment here and reflect on this. Okay, so drop in the chat. Again, you can do it to the full chat or to just me. What is one nutrition rule or diet culture message that you've heard that has made planning meals or what you're eating feel more complicated or overwhelming? This is going to help me see how, or all of us see how these messages can affect everyone differently. Okay. So rather than, um, okay, sugar-free options. Yeah, alternative sugars. I feel like that's super common where people just don't do well with them. And that, yeah, I mean, a lot of times people will swap sugar-free options for and or have that instead of like the full actual food that they're wanting. And it always is going to feel like a replacement at that point, right? And doesn't actually give you what you're really wanting or needing. And then if it's giving you headaches or other symptoms, like it's totally not worth it. Okay, so rather than giving my clients or getting my clients to fight their environment, which honestly is just going to be a losing battle every time, I like to help them create a more supportive environment. And meal planning is going to be the necessary key to this puzzle. So the secret to reaching any goal, especially nutrition ones, is prioritizing consistency over perfection. And I feel like, we probably see that all the time. Consistency, consistency, consistency. It's because it really is key and it can be as simple as that because it's going to work better. Okay. But in order to be consistent, you're going to need a plan. And without a plan, you just have a wish for success. And then life is just going to keep getting in the way and make it really, really hard to follow anything. So, in order to keep sticking to the plan or choosing the behaviors that support your goal, you're going to need it to feel easier to do that than to choose an alternative. And this is where most nutrition plans fail. What happens when you're busy, you're stressed, you're tired, or something comes up? Just because it just becomes too hard and life is going to decide for you at that point. And this is especially true for busy parents, full-time working folks. We often forget our own needs and the needs of others tend to come first. So we need to take a different approach. Okay, so instead of imposing some unrealistic plan that does not work with your life, I'm going to help you create a plan that fits into the life you have, that is flexible, that flexible enough for you to be able to stick with it when the chaos inevitably happens, because we know it's going to. Okay, a successful meal plan is simple. Okay, it does not need to be complicated, and it's so much better when it's not. It has some built-in flexibility, and this is what I call planning to fail. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. Um, and then it's built for the life that you actually have. We need it to be realistic for you. Okay, so the perks of having a meal plan available to you to follow is having freedom from wondering and worrying about what to make for meals. You have readily available, convenient, and nutritious options, and more consistency, balance, and empowered nutrition decision making, which is going to save you time and money. It's the framework that you need to successfully reach any sort of nutrition goals that you have. So while it can feel initially like a pain in the ass, it's going to be the missing piece to help you finally make progress on the goals that you've set. And it obviously has a lot of other benefits too. Okay, so it also doesn't, meal planning does not need to be as overwhelming as what you're probably thinking or what diet culture messaging has led us to believe. Okay, all it really is planning out your meals for the week, making a list of the ingredients, and purchasing the ingredients. Okay, and there are lots of different ways to do this. So you don't even necessarily need to cook anything or enjoy cooking. And you definitely don't need to buy the cute little identical containers or make lists with indecipherable script across the top telling you to keep living, laughing, and loving. Okay, but the good news is that you really can't mess this up because there's no right or wrong way or best way to meal plan, because the best way is going to be the way that works consistently for you. And that is best discovered through trial and error. Okay, so let's take a minute, stretch out, maybe stand up a little bit. And then I want you to grab pen and paper, your calendar, schedule, and we are going to get started on the actual creating of the meal plan. Again, you can also pull up the worksheets and the PDF and the link there if you would prefer that. Okay, so I'll give you a minute here to grab that stuff. All right. Let's start out with step one. We need to know what we're working with, okay? So the first thing that I want you to do is to decide how long you want to plan for. Okay, so some folks like to plan for 1 week, others like to plan for a full month. I find that 1 to 2 weeks is a really great starting point, and that's what I would advise if this is pretty new to you. However, for this class, we're going to primarily focus on 5 weekdays. Weekends tend to require a bit of a different approach, and I often coach those separately because of it. I also want to mention that I never recommend starting off with planning every single meal throughout the day. Okay. So I like to choose the meal that you struggle with the most. And that's a good place to start. So maybe lunchtime at work, dinner time after a long day or busy day. But for this class, let's focus solely on lunches. And if you want to choose dinners, that's fine, or maybe breakfast. But why I like to start out with lunches is because a lot of the people that I work with struggle with lunches. Maybe a bit of, they're working, if there's a bit of neurodivergence thrown in there, maybe they're forgetting to eat or taking the time to eat. And then that's going to greatly affect how you're eating and what your habits are the rest of the day. Um, so you're going to want to write the days down. So if you have the PDF pulled up or the worksheet, you're going to want to write the days down on one side and then on a vertical list. And then next to it, have space to be able to take some notes. Okay, so here's an example from the guide that, again, I will send this in an email after the class so that you can have it if you didn't grab it now or at the beginning of class. Then next, you're going to want to check your calendar and next to each day where you have that space there, I want you to write down anything of importance. So maybe some appointments or busier days for you. Maybe you have kids' soccer practice or games, or you have late work meetings or things like that. That might disrupt a typical schedule. Write those on there, okay? So again, extra busy days, maybe you're going to need to be eating out or on the go, things like that. Okay, now we're going to dive into writing down a meal for each day. Okay, remember for now, let's keep it super simple. Okay, remember that, what you wrote down next to each day, the days that are particularly busy, and let's plan accordingly with meals that you're choosing. This tends to feel super overwhelming for people because there are so many different options. Let's keep it simple, okay? Maybe you have some like go-to things that you make or go pick up or whatever. Let's just do that for now. Okay, we want to stay super realistic about your personality, your lifestyle, what your preferences are. So, like, if you hate cooking, it's probably not the best time to head to Pinterest and write a list of like elaborate recipes that you need to be following. But if you do love cooking and you also happen to have 10 kids that are each on different soccer leagues, you probably don't have time to be making some extravagant five-course meal every night either. Okay, so planning something easy for these busier days is going to set you up for success when you're probably otherwise going to be scrambling. Okay, so I want to emphasize that meal planning does not mean that you need to cook every single meal. You only need to account for and plan for the meals. Okay. So using a meal kit, a meal delivery service, or planning to pick something up, maybe a rotisserie chicken, your favorite takeout spot, whatever. These are all great strategies. You just need to have a plan and write a meal in each spot. And again, this is just for just your lunches or just your dinners. We're just choosing one meal to start with for the 5 days. Um, so again, if you're struggling with feeling a bit overwhelmed, one way that we can kind of narrow the focus here is to choose a framework within this framework. Okay, so for example, using themes such as Meatless Monday, maybe Taco Tuesday, Lazy Friday, this can make it can make it feel a little bit easier to have a list of choices for each day be shorter. Okay. If you tend to enjoy simpler meals, it can feel a lot less overwhelming to break your meals into categories. So, for example, you might choose a different protein source for each day. For example, maybe some ground beef, tofu, eggs, whatever, a carb to go with it, and then some sort of veggie. You can keep it interesting by swapping out sauces and other seasonings or flavors that you're using to make it tasty because we don't want to sacrifice flavors, okay? Don't sacrifice flavors. We want it to be enjoyable at least a bit. Okay, another example is to build meals around the same protein, which can eliminate some overwhelm and be a bit more cost effective too. So, this doesn't mean that you need to eat the same thing every day, although that can be a strategy that works for some people, but it doesn't have to be if you're like, nope, cannot eat the same thing day after day. Okay, an example of that would be choosing chicken thighs as your protein for that week. So then you could pick out 2 or 3 of your favorite chicken thigh meals, and then fill the remaining spots with meatless options. Okay, and then lastly, one other example would be to use a meal kit for 3 meals. Have leftovers for 1 meal, and then stop at your favorite smoothie place for your final meal. So again, restaurants, takeout, more convenient options can absolutely be part of your meal plan, and that can still support your nutrition goals. I feel like that's a super common myth that people feel like, again, they need to be cooking all the things, but you don't. But as you're choosing your meals, make sure that you're saving any recipes that you're planning on using if it's not something that you are picking up, it's ready to go, or you just have it memorized because we're going to need that for the next step. Okay, so again, save the recipes. Let's save your plan. We want to make life easier for future you. We want a system that's going to be repeatable. Okay. And you're going to want to save, or so that you can refer back to it. Okay. Saving your meal plan is going to allow you to reap the rewards of all of the work that you're doing right now at a later date when you just cannot deal with or make time for coming up with new meals. It's also going to give you ideas when you could be in a rut, and it might remind you of some old favorites. Okay, you're going to want a system that allows you to note the meal and where to find the recipe again if it's something that you are making. Okay, some ideas to help you save it is, or where to save it is in your phone notes app, or if you have some other habit app, or oh my gosh, organization app, family organization thing. My brain is not working right now on what those are called. But you could also use a document, a spreadsheet, or a good old-fashioned notebook. My favorite. If you really love spending the time and having visuals, maybe making a Pinterest board where you can refer back to meals, which again can be helpful if you get caught in a rut and you're just like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to make. And then it's easier to save recipes on there as well. Some people also find it helpful to have a monthly rotation. So they make their meal plans for 4 weeks and then they just reuse it starting back at week 1. Again, make sure you save any recipes because we're going to need it for step 4. Okay. Using the recipes and ingredient lists for each meal, we're going to make a grocery list. So you're going to go through each recipe one by one, closing the tabs or cookbooks as you go. And if it's accessible and available in your area, I highly recommend ordering your groceries online. I know some people are like, oh, they just don't pick the same sort of foods. I get it. Believe me, I get it. But if you're, in a time crunch, that might be an easier option. Um, so that's going to allow you to skip the whole like writing out of a list where you can just put it directly into the grocery order or online order into your virtual cart, and they can just show up on your door or you can go pick them up. And one thing that I really love about online ordering is they often have an option of either like saving a grocery list or like your frequently ordered items. And that can make the whole process a lot faster too. But if that's not accessible to you or you just don't want to do that, having the list with you at the store is going to help you actually enact the plan and not be surprised by the ingredients that you later don't have. Um, Pairing meal planning with your weekly grocery shopping is really going to help you make meal planning feel a lot more automatic. So you don't get stuck without the food that you're needing or go back to flying by the seat of your pants. Um, I also if you are anything like me, I tend to leave any sort of written list on the counter and don't realize it until I'm at the store if I am shopping in store for groceries. So I will often save a list in my phone in my notes app, or my husband will we will send each other grocery lists as things come up, or like update our grocery list when we need things. So we have it just in our text thread that we save and can refer to when we're at the store. So as an example, in my house, I have three kids. My kids like to have a say in what we're eating throughout the week. But we find it easiest to keep a similar rotation for multiple weeks. And a lot of times this is kind of our fallback plan for extended periods of time. So on Mondays, we tend to have veggies that we roasted over the weekend with rice or some sort of pasta and some sort of ground meat with sauce. On Tuesdays, we have Taco Tuesday or some sort of Mexican or Spanish dish. We do takeout on Wednesdays because that tends to be our busier evening with activities and working later and things like that. Some sort of Asian dish or sushi takeout, sushi, grocery store sushi. My kids love that on Thursdays, and then breakfast for dinner on Fridays. So over time, we've been able to easily fill meals into these categories without much thought. And we kind of just have our go-to grocery items that we automatically get each week to make these meals. So we do rotate in and out with different ingredients or proteins, things like that, to change it up a bit. But it works really well for us. We do have a little whiteboard thing on that stays on our fridge with the meal plan written on it, so we can refer back to it whenever needed. Um, and we don't update it all the time, but it is kind of nice to have a visual if we either, forgot the plan or had not updated it in a while. Um, and we can just refer back to that. Okay, so that brings us to our final step, making it a habit. I'm really big on habits and habit-based changes because they're the things that we do every single day without thinking about them and without it feeling like a bunch of work for us. Um, if we can change our habits to support the behaviors and goals that we want to see, we're going to make changes that are going to last long term and be more sustainable. So I encourage you to make meal planning a habit that is going to stick with you because it's going to make your life easier. Okay. And while you're still forming any habit, it can be necessary to have a reminder. So some ways to do this are maybe setting a weekly reminder in your phone, preferably before you run out of groceries and everyone riots. Um, or you can pair it with an existing habit. I really like this. For myself and other clients that are, starting out with building it. So maybe you make your next week's meal plan during your lunch break on Fridays, or maybe on Sunday night when you're waiting for your kid at their dance lesson. And eventually, with practice, meal planning is going to become a habit. It's because it's going to be a system and a framework that is just easier to follow than to not do it. Okay, I'm curious, which of these meal planning approaches sounds most doable for your current lifestyle? So type in the chat whether you're drawn to more themed days like Taco Tuesday, or maybe building a meal around a protein, or using a mix of meal kits simple meals, takeout options, things like that. It is going to help me understand what resonates most with the group. Okay, getting a lot of the themed days. Yeah, like I said, that's something that works really well for my family. My kids are pretty young, and it's just easier for them to help have a say in it. Um, yeah, we like it. Okay. Okay, let's recap here. You're going to make a vertical list of your days that you are planning for. Okay, then you're going to take a realistic look at your schedule and make note of any of the standout days. So, any of the days that you have other things going on that maybe aren't in your typical schedule. Then you're going to pick your meals, keeping the recipes available. Remember, keep things simple. Okay, then you're going to save your plan and the recipes so that you can then plug your ingredients into your grocery list and then set a reminder to repeat this until it becomes a habit. And remember, if you're struggling with this, or after a week, you're like, oh my gosh, this is not gonna stick, make it smaller. Okay. If trying to plan out 5 lunches or 5 dinners starting out is just not realistic for you, and you're like, too much to think about, we're not going to stick with it. Let's do maybe 1 or 2 days, and then we're going to build on that over time. Okay. So it's okay to make things smaller if it's not working. It doesn't mean that you failed. If you go try to implement the 5 days that we just worked on next week and or this week, and it doesn't go how you were expecting it to, you did not fail. Okay. Remember that. Just make it smaller. Okay, so some helpful tips are to not stress about every single ingredient or meal being perfectly balanced or nutritious. So instead, let's aim for some overall consistency, balance, and variety in your meals. I find it helpful to plan a break from cooking because you know you're going to have those days where maybe you forget to defrost the meat or where you just can't even do it. So planning something that is easy and fast to make can be super helpful here. And that's where we are planning to fail. My planning to fail fallback is having chicken strips in the freezer and canned green beans. And we do that once a week, once every couple of weeks at least, because sometimes we're just too exhausted to follow the plan. And we need the easier option. Okay. The internet can be your friend and your enemy. So don't be afraid to try new recipes. I love that. But also set yourself up for success by being realistic about the time that you have and what your cooking experience is. Okay, so we want this to be sustainable. Making a cordon bleu on a bed of 4 cheese risotto with a garlic aioli drizzle every single night of the week is probably not going to be a habit that sticks around unless you're like some great chef that's a super easy meal for you. Um, One example that I'm going to share of one of my nutrition clients who was feeling overwhelmed by all of the recipes she could be making to try to incorporate some more vegetables into her week. Um, she ended up getting takeout more often than not because she was just feeling so overwhelmed by it. So we discussed some vegetables that she liked, and a good solution for her has been to add a handful of greens. So think like spinach, arugula, kale, things like that to some of her meals. She likes this and it's super doable for her. So now she just makes sure to get some greens, whatever when she's feeling that week, each time she goes to the grocery store. So she has them readily available and can use them throughout the week. So obviously, that's not going to work for everyone based off of food preferences, availability, accessibility, things like that. But it just goes to show how simple we can keep things. Remember that the goal here is that we don't have to go gourmet or surprise yourself with complicated recipes, with steps and with lots of steps and new to you ingredients. It's to make all the things around food feel easier and to give yourself a freaking break. Because let's be real, existing in our world right now is stressful enough that we do not need to put a ton of pressure on ourselves around food things. Okay. Um, let's think about the long term again, keeping things sustainable and simple. Okay, so now let's dive a little bit into meal prep because this often goes hand in hand with meal planning. Um, because there's no point to planning to eat the food if it doesn't feel easy to get and eat it. Okay. The goal of meal prep is to make following the meal plan the easiest option for you to make. Okay, so I often tell my clients that they only need to do the minimum effective dose for everything. I tell myself that too. But how much meal prep is necessary to be successful and how much I recommend is going to be so dependent on the person and what sort of stumbling blocks you are finding with following through on your plan. And just like meal planning, meal prepping does not need to feel like a part-time job. A lot of it is just capitalizing on the time that you're already spending to make your life easier. Okay, so here are some examples of what I mean by meal prepping. Do the work once. If you're cutting up one pepper, you might as well cut up five or other vegetables you have on hand. If you're making a batch of chili, you might double it and throw one of them in the freezer to eat at a later date, or maybe turn it into lunches for the week. Another option that I really love is pre-made convenient options. Okay, so some things like pre-cut veggie and fruit trays that can save you a moment where when you don't have time to like cut up and prep the vegetables for whatever you're eating. And you can actually often find them on sale at the grocery store in the evenings. Just a little tip there. Um, a lot of fruits and vegetables make easy grab snacks. So bananas, apples, other pitted fruits, mini cucumbers, things like that. Having them on hand can be really helpful to kind of fall back on as easy snacks. I personally really love Power Bowls for lunches. It can just be really easy to make a big batch of something like rice or pasta, throw in some sort of protein. Then if you have pre-cooked veggies, maybe you have frozen, canned, whatever, maybe a box or a mix, salad mix. Words are hard. And then just add a dash of whatever sauce or flavoring you like. And that can be, again, a super easy lunch option with so many different variations of it. Having a charcuterie board, and it does not need to be a fancy thing, okay? But having it with some cut up fruits and veggies in the fridge, cheese, whatever you like, bring it out before meals or as a snack. And this can also be a really great way to get some extra fruit and veggies in. Get that fiber, and then utilizing things like the convenience things like instant oatmeal, some microwave rice, bagged salads, yogurt, canned veggies, meats, all the things like that. Some people do like to have a meal prepping day where they make their meals for the whole week, and have them in a container ready to go. Others don't. I also know some people that will have a day every month where they make a bunch of meals for dinner that they can just throw in the freezer and then pop in the oven or the microwave to heat up for those busier nights if they're not wanting to do takeout or pick something up. And you might not want or need to go that far. It can be way simpler than that. But your meal prep is going to also depend on the facilities that you have available to you, and for those meals. So, for example, if you're working from home during the day, you might be able to throw something in a pan. Or if you are at the office, you might only have access to a microwave. And that will feel you just are going to want to choose the option that is easiest for you in that moment. Um, and maybe a charcuterie board is the thing that you choose because it feels most appetizing in the moment. But as you practice meal planning in your own life, you might find it still feels daunting or difficult, which is the opposite of a habit. And if you're feeling this way, I want to encourage you again to break it down into a more manageable task. So maybe only planning part of the meal, or again, planning for less meals for the week. Um, oops. Or maybe there's something about the follow through that's giving you trouble. So, for example, you're planning things that you don't actually want to eat. I feel like that is super common where people are like, okay, yes, I've made these meals or prepped these roasted veggies or these proteins. But then when it comes time to eating them, they're like, nope, I don't want that. But then on the opposite side, once you start to see the consistency and ease happening around planning meals, you're going to be able to extend this into other areas such as weekends, dinners, breakfast, snacks. And then from there, you can start to tweak the contents of your meals and work towards building a balanced plate and then making adjustments that you need to reach your goals. And that's something that I go into more in depth with nutrition coaching clients. And before we get into the Q&A, I do want to be transparent about something. What we covered today will absolutely help you create a meal plan. But here's what I've learned from working with tons of clients. Knowing what to do and actually doing it are two very different things. And that's where more personalized and comprehensive support is going to make all the difference. Okay, so I want to share a little story about Sarah, who came to me after trying various meal planning options on her own. She had the recipes all planned out, she had the cute little matching containers, and she had the best intentions. But each time by the middle of the week, she was back to scrambling. Okay, and the difference here was that she needed someone to help her troubleshoot what her specific obstacles were, like her picky eating kids and her rotating work schedule, um, to make it work for her. And that's why I created Unshakable, uh, because I want to help you map out a plan and create a sustainable system that is specific to you. In this 4-week coaching program, you're going to get more personalized support to build a foundation and custom solution for your specific needs and challenges. Okay, so I am offering this comprehensive program that is designed to build on everything that we've covered today. Okay, we're going to be diving more into how to build a balanced meal and on the role that different food categories, so think like vegetables, carbs, proteins, fats, things like that, are playing and supporting your goals. And I will help you gain further resilience and confidence as you build your foundation around nutrition and what you're eating. By the end of Unshakable, you're going to be able to put together a nutritiously balanced meal, be a confident and practiced meal planner, and know how to use meal planning and prep to be successful in your goals. You're also going to get the support from me and the tools that you're going to need to troubleshoot and make a plan rock solid. Okay. So I want you to be confident that no matter how busy and unpredictable life is, you're still going to keep making progress towards your goals. And you're going to go from staring blankly in the fridge at 6 p.m., wondering what's for dinner, to having a system that's so automatic that meal planning takes you like 15 minutes per week because you're going to be so solid at it. Okay, so this is not just another nutrition program. We know there are so many out there. We're going to create a system that is sustainable over the course of the 4 weeks that you're going to be able to keep following after that. So in week one, you'll have your first complete meal plan created, the groceries ordered, and your food prepped and ready to go. By the end of week two, you're going to know how to you know exactly how to balance your plates without tracking calories or macros because it's not super fun to do that. Okay. And then by week three, or by the end of week three, you're going to have some reliable backup plans for the days that end up, life is lifing and it's just crazy. Okay, by the end of week four, then the end of the program, you're going to have that 30-day meal rotation that you can use over and over again. Okay, so Unshakable starts officially on October 19th, and here's what you're going to get. 30-minute weekly Zoom calls where I provide education on building a balanced plate and troubleshooting any and all challenges that come up for you. And then each call is going to build on the last one. And I'm going to help you make an actionable plan that is tailored specifically to your lifestyle, your preferences, and your goals. Okay, this way you can be sure that you're going to get the most out of the program and implement the training throughout your week. All of the calls will be recorded too. So if you aren't able to make it to one of the calls, no worries. Record it and send it out afterwards. And then you're going to get the full 4 weeks of direct support through my private Bulty Fitness app, where we have group messaging for some accountability, some group accountability there. And it's great for like throwing ideas off of each other, things like that. And then you also get unlimited access to me through the messaging in the app for questions, troubleshooting, and accountability. And because you have invested time in today's class, I'm going to offer this complete program for just $99 instead of the regular $149 price. All you have to do is use the code here, Plan A 25, all caps, at checkout. I will put the link here in the chat. Um, But this discount is only available through this Wednesday, October 8th, the end of the day on Wednesday. So here's what happens next. If you're ready to stop winging it and finally have a meal planning system that actually sticks, here are the steps that you're going to need to take. Click the link here. okay, that I just posted in the chat. We're going to use the code all caps Plan A 25 again in the chat there at checkout. Okay, then you're going to get immediate access to the app and the program materials that are in there. And again, we officially start on October 19th. Our first call is going to be on October 21st. I am limiting this to just 12 people so that I can give everyone personalized attention and help them work through their specific plans. But I want to know who is ready to make this the last time that you feel overwhelmed with meal planning. Go ahead and type I'm in the chat if you're going to join us. Don't wait until you're back to feeling overwhelmed and out of control with your nutrition. Let's take action right now while you're feeling motivated and you have these concepts fresh in your mind. And this is open for signups starting this evening. You're going to get an email after the class ends with more details and a link to the sign up page again. That is in the chat there. You can check that out, get some more information. And again, because I want to be able to provide the most thorough support for each person, the limited spots will likely go pretty quickly. Okay, so don't hesitate on grabbing a spot. But I also want to thank you so much for being here and taking the time to work through these skills that we covered